that self-mastery has everything to do with the subject of leadership. And if we didn't have self-mastery, there really would not be the possibility of any type of leadership at all. But I want us to explore just in this first session the whole question of the self and what we mean by that. And I'm sure that most of you have been on some sort of inner journey or self-development process. And that's what's made you give up your time to this weekend to come together. I don't think you would be here if that wasn't the case. But of course, we all have different backgrounds and different ideas about what we mean when we talk about the self. For myself, when I first came across these ideas, I'd been in contact with Brahma Kumaris since childhood because of my mother and grandmother, but I personally studied these ideas when I was 19. And within a few weeks, I decided I wanted this to be my life. And when I first heard the definition of Raj Yoga, the path that we follow, when I heard the definition of the self as the inner being, it was quite amazing the impact it had on me. Because, of course, when we talk about the self, normally we think about our physical identity, we think about gender, about age, about nationality, about religion or no religion. We think about profession, career, and designation. Sometimes connected with that, we think about the status that we have in society, depending on the size of our house, our car, and the size of our bank account, all of these things. But when we sit down quietly, we realize that all of these things are very, very temporary. My age, it changes every day. My nationality, we're in the habit now of changing countries. I was born in India, I grew up in England. So very often there's a mixture of nationalities and continents in terms of our culture and our upbringing. And so if I rest my identity on all of these external things, and I've mentioned just a few, I really wouldn't be able to know who I am because there would be a great deal of confusion. And I see that that's also part of this identity crisis that's existing in most places around the world today. And if I were to sit in silence and go deep inside myself, I would maybe come to the conclusion that there are aspects of the inner being which can't be weighed or measured by any external instrument on any level whatsoever. Even the most refined instruments of science today wouldn't be able to tell me exactly what is the shape or the size of my thoughts, for instance. The impact of my thoughts on my brain, the impact of my brain on my body. Yes, we could measure nano differences in terms of all the changes that happen. It happens, when I have pure thoughts, good thoughts, there's now the whole subject of positive psychology, and they can tell you what is the impact on my consciousness and also on my body. And therefore also is likely to be translated in terms of my actions. But exactly how do I measure the thought itself is not possible. And the reason is that one simple thing. I sit here and I think about Berlin, and I can reach there in a moment with the power of my mind. And so my thoughts cross the boundaries of time and also distance. And there isn't an invention that we have by science or technology to be able to measure this. We don't have the instruments to go back in time or to project into the future. We can do future scenario planning, but actually to be able to move into the future and tell us what it's going to be like is not possible. So there's something about my inner world which is beyond the physical. Not just that it's invisible. We know that there's lots of invisible things in any room. There's all the electromagnetic currents, there's the radio waves, there's the electric waves, all of these, but they can be measured on a physical level. But my thoughts, and connected with that, my feelings, connected with that, my own core values, connected with that, my personality. None of these things can be measured by any instrument, and yet they are real. There is a reality of existence that all of this has. And the more I'm able to go deeper within myself and come to understand how all of these energies that I carry within myself are actually defining me as a person, the more I understand this and experience the power to be able to manage these, to that extent, I have self mastery. And to that extent, I can be a leader, because in today's world, which is so uncertain, we need to have leadership that's able to be stable and consistent and absolutely clear and transparent. And if we look at the story of the last few millennia, not just recent times of the last 4 years or 5 years, even, which has been completely crazy, and it's become an era we've described as post truth, and all sorts of fake news and things. It goes on now, even. But even before that, the last few millennia, when it's been a patriarchal society, we just haven't been able to have that sort of leadership which is consistent, transparent, clear, and honest, and um, has integrity. It just hasn't happened. At a particular time, there's somebody we say is a hero, and a little while later, we understand differently. So I think when we're talking about feminine leadership, we're talking about a leadership that's able to have, maybe two words describe it. Instead of a hot head and a cold heart, maybe what we want is a cool head and a warm heart. And when I'm talking about heart, I'm not talking about the pumping machine that can be measured and changed and all sorts of things done to it. I'm talking about the inner state of being, of feelings, of emotions, and being able to be a master of these, so that what I'm doing today in the inner work that I continue with, and it's a lifelong journey to do that, but within that inner work is really to see what is it that's taking my head out of balance and making it hot and flare and be reactive, to the state where the head can be cool and calm and stable. And again, I'm not just talking about the physical size of my head or the physical size of my brain, but my inner capacity for reason, for understanding. I need that coolness and clarity. And then, yes, I need warmth in my feelings. Compassion was mentioned earlier. Feelings of real compassion and feelings of sisterhood and brotherhood within the human family, so that I'm aware that there's that invisible bond that holds us all together. And if one part of that family is suffering, then the impact is going to be on the whole. In recent times, we've thought about and heard about a lot of the 1%, and the 1% that has money and power and control, and the rest of the world. Well, there's a 20% or an 18% in between that maybe is sort of comfortable, mostly, but then there's about 80% that actually lacks all the physical amenities for even a simple, dignified human life. And so there's something wrong with society. And I think the summary of hot heads and cold hearts sums it up. And so the more I understand where my thoughts are coming from, the more deeply I can understand how to be able to channel the energy of my thoughts onto a very high level, an elevated, pure level. To that extent, I'm able to make sure that my feelings are not of anger and reactivity, not passive, not talking about passive, but talking about the warmth and empathy and the compassion and the understanding of feelings that is so very much lacking and is very much needed in today's world. And so, if I look around the gatherings in most churches or meditation centers, any one of these places, what I find is that maybe it's a majority of women that are there. These things are open for everyone. But yet somehow it seems to be women who are drawn to something of this nature that takes in the subject of the inner being and belief and faith and so on. And so exploring how all of these things are going on within my own inner world. And if I'm pointing here, I'm not just pointing to the skin on my forehead. I'm actually pointing to the location of that inner being, the living energy, the energy of life that I am, that energy which has within it all these aspects that I described as being the living aspects of the human being, the things that science cannot measure, but yet can see the impact of all of these things in our lives. And so the whole subject of spirituality is looking at this non physical, metaphysical dimension and is showing us how to be able to use these inner faculties that we all have in the best possible way so that we're using our energy to direct not only our lives but also to lead others and to move in that direction in which together truly we have been able to change a system and we have been able to create a better world, which is one of equality. It's not one of matriarchy, because just as patriarchy has had problems, I can imagine that, again, if it tilts the other side to matriarchy, there would be other problems. But no, to be able to have that state of alignment and balance, first within myself, as was mentioned earlier, the feminine and masculine energies, but also to come to a point where men and women can treat each other with mutual respect and dignity and work together in harmony for the betterment of the world for the future. And I know that it is possible because whatever is out of balance within the individual and within our systems in the world now, it's possible for us to put them right again. And it begins through this inner exploration so that I can balance all these energies within myself once again. So, this is a little bit of a brief um, opening, uh, an invitation to have this weekend in which we explore these inner energies and see what it is we can do. Thank you for your attention.